Hey everyone, Eran Stern here from sterneffects.com with some tips and tricks for TypeMonkey script. As you know, this fantastic script helps you to lay the foundations for a complex kinetic typography animation based on markers, colors, and randomized type animation. I want to show you how I've used this script in order to create the following clip. Now note, this will be an Hebrew type clip, which I set up in order to demonstrate the new Hebrew module for TypeMonkey, which is, of course, as you guessed, allow you to use this with right to left languages, Hebrew and Arabic for most. So don't be alarmed by what you see here, even if you don't get the meaning of the word and the song, and of course the text, just look at it from a design perspective. Good typography, by its essence, is a mixture between shapes and weights, so the artistic decisions should come through. Okay, so here's the clip, and after it, I'll show you how I've modified the text animators and apply some effects in order to create this look. For what it's worth, the lyrics and melody for this song were written by Ohad Koski, one of my favorite singers here in Israel. And before we'll dive in, and I'm going to show you, by the way, 5 things. I'm going to choose a couple of the movement and gestures that I did and just expand a little bit more. But just before doing so, I just want to quickly go through the process of how I build the basic composition using the TypeMonkey script in order to create the kinetic typography automation. So I've already set up the TypeMonkey interface here at the right, already pasted the words. You can see that some of them are divided by this vertical line, which means that the script will treat it as one group. And by the way, the meanings for all those commands are written here. So just press on the little star and you can get a sense of what each of them is doing. Anyhow, for this case, I just used the vertical line just to make sure that a couple of the sentences will come out as one group. I already set up the layout. Let's just go with the rotation probability of maybe 80%. And I already set a couple of colors using a color scheme I've built using Cooler. So just to show you quickly, this is the theme that I had built inside Cooler. I basically downloaded the ASE file, Adobe Swatch Exchange. And then inside After Effects, I actually used another script, which you can find in AE script from Mama World. This is going by the name of Chameleon. And this script will allow you to load the ASE file. So just press on it and press on the file after you download it. And then you can basically sample the colors. So this is what I've previously prepared. Now I'm just going to change the type animation from speed to slow because the rhythm of the song is a little bit slower than the usual narration that we have in terms of using this kinetic animation. So slow speed will work very nice. I'm also going to enable motion blur. I'm going to leave the monkey cam as is, but most importantly, I need to choose the TypeMonkey Hebrew text module in order for it to respect the Hebrew letters, writing from right to left. Another thing that I'm going to set from this stage is the marker sync. As soon as I'm going to highlight it, the script will ask you to select a marker guide layer. I've already worked on the position of the markers, and here is my TypeMonkey markers layer, which I'm going to use in order to place this. Now, you have a lot of tutorials over aescripts of how to use this, so I'm not going to cover it deeply. Now we are ready, so let's press on the do it button and let TypeMonkey do its magic. Now while it's working, if you want to actually make it a little bit more quicker, you can actually go to another software or basically just hide After Effects so it won't need to refresh. As soon as the script will finish its work, After Effects will become the forward software. And now I'm just going to select my previous markers layer and basically delete it. So I'm just going to be left with one layer of markers. This is just my tidiness. Now if I'm going to scrub, we can see that it is working in Hebrew. However, it is still keeping the English properties, meaning that all the alignments are to the left. And for example, in this case, the word here is typing from left to right instead of right to left. So after you do this operation, if you want to work in the Hebrew mode, you also need to run this script, which will help you to justify everything to the right. And once again, you don't need to look at it while it's working. So in this case, I'm just going to show you the font that I'm going to use. This is a special modular font which has 10 weights, and each one of the weights will help us to create the final look. And of course, I will elaborate further once we get there, but I'm just going to give a shout to Roy Stradi, which was one of my students who basically designed this amazing font. Okay, so we can return back to After Effects. Now all the work has been done, and you can see that justification is in place, and also the type is writing itself in terms of Hebrew from right to left. At this stage, we can press 0 and create a quick run preview just to check that everything is in order. So I'm just going to preview maybe the first 30 seconds of this song just to examine the result that I got from the initial state of applying the TypeMonkey script. Okay, I think that this works fine. And by the way, each time that you are using the randomized type animation, you will probably get a different result. So just in order to match my final clip, I've saved my basic setup, which is the steps that I did here in front of you, but the animation will look exactly like it will look at the final stage. So this means that I worked on it a little bit, and just to show you what I did, I'm just going to come back to the previous composition, the one that we just used. And for example, I'm going to select this layer, and under the scene, if you unshine the layers and select it, you will see that it will select the controller of the layer. This means that now if I want to reframe it or move the other ones out of the frames, because let's say that I want the attention of the viewer just to be on this sentence, I can do it fairly quickly. So I went through the whole composition and did the same thing. And then I've saved the copy, and this is the copy that I just showed you. So I danced in bed basic. which has this little movement and just better framing. So we will be able to mimic the final result. Okay, so this is going to be the first step. And now let's try to see what we can add in terms of design and style to make this animation more interesting. Since in this step, I really want to pay attention to the text treatment inside After Effects, I'm going to switch my workspace from standard, which include the TypeMonkey panel, to the text built-in workspace that comes with After Effects. This will allow you to have access to the character and paragraph, and of course to the effects and preset panels, and will allow you to move a little bit more quickly. I'm also going to press Command plus, Control plus on the PC, just so we can get a closer look at what we are about to do. So let's start with these two lines here. And those lines says, in little movement, בתנועות קטנות, just little gestures. And I just want to modify it a little bit, maybe choose a different kind of font and change the animation so it will reflect the meaning of the song. Let's start with this word. So first I'm going to select it, and in this case I'm going to unshine my layers, reselect it once again, and I'm going to unlock the type. Once unlocked, we can basically change the type size, and we can also choose a different font. So in this case, let's go with the outline mode. So this is the same font, just a different weight. I also want to reduce its size to maybe 100. And I want to change the animation of it. So I'm just going to open the text properties, and under the Animator, I'm just going to choose the tracking option. It's just outside of the screen, but you can choose it from here. I'm going to change the alignment of the text to be centered, and I'm just going to reposition it basically just above the lower line. Once it's centered, I can set the tracking amount to move from the middle of the word here. Now, I'm just going to add a very simple expression here just to create a mild movement. So holding down Alt and press on the stopwatch, I'm just going to type wiggle, open parentheses, and let's go with the very low values of 2 and 2. So 2 in terms of the frequency and 2 in terms of the tracking amount. And I'm just going to solo it for a moment, mute the sound, and let's also set a working area. So let's say that we are going to see it from this point, pressing B on the keyboard, until this point. Once again, this is what we are getting. So very, very mild movement. Now I want to create some kind of a misalignment effect. So I'm going to basically duplicate the text and change the color of it. So once again, I need access to my chameleon panel here. And since we switched workspace, it lost the color theme. So no worries. I'm just going to load it once again. And this will allow me to keep using my graphic color scheme language. So now I basically have two copies of it, because the wiggle command is doing its stuff using the index number. We get a different variation for each one of the wiggles. Nice. So let's move onward and do the same thing, but with a little bit of a twist to the second word here. Once again, we need to communicate the meaning of the text. So in this case, the word קטנות is small, so small movements. So I'm just going to take a different approach. I'm going to open up my text here after unlocking it. And this time from the Animate option, I'm going to add a rotation animator and set the degrees here to something very small. Let's say 4 degrees. Now I want to wiggle each letter on its own. So actually we can add a wiggly selector to the same animator, and this will take care of it. So once again, I'm going to preview this part and we can see that we have something which we can be proud of. So very easily we managed to modify the automatic version that we had from the TypeMonkey script. Okay, let's move on and see how we can make another improvement. I'm just going to zoom out and also press Alt ? To fit my viewer to the screen. Now let's work on this text. The meaning of this line is whatever you do, don't fall. So let's do just the opposite. Let's just make those letters fall apart. And I want to make them fall apart in a cascade style. So once again, I'm unlocking the text and open it. And then I'm going to add few animators. I'm going to start with position, and then to the same animator, I'm also going to add rotation, and also let's go with blur, which is at the bottom of the list. Now, these values that I'm going to set up will be the end values. So at the end of this, I just want the letters to be out of the frame. So basically, I'm just going to drag it all the way down. On top of it, I'm going to add 90 degrees of rotation, and let's go with the 40 pixels values in terms of the blur. Now, I'm going to open up my range selector and create an animation just when the type is visible. So in this case, this line stays on the screen a lot of time. Let's just zoom in so we can see in terms of the markers, where are the area that we need to worry about. So it's basically from the point of the current time indicator until the end of the working area. All right, so let's set the animation. I'm going to set the end value here to 0. And once again, let's just make sure that it will start from this point where the text is already visible. So this will be my first keyframe. However, I want to play with the start in this case because I want the letters to be fall from the left to the right. And this is just an artistic choice. So keyframe the start at 0 at this point, then move all the way, maybe just before the new type is coming in, and make it all the way to 100%. Now, once again, I want to create a cascade animation. So I want to maybe tidy it a little bit, make it look a little bit more natural so we don't have gaps between each word. The trick for this is to open up the advanced options under your animator. Under there, you will have a couple of options which you can change how the text is being modified. I'm just going to start by basing it on characters, excluding spaces, which will give it more natural fall off. And then I'm going to change the shape from square to ramp down. And this will create a cascade animation. So you can see that the letters are falling and the other letters starting to fall before the end one are reaching the final position. Now you can also play with the ease high and the ease low if you want to maybe have more control. So let's say -30 and maybe 30 for the ease low, and ramp preview this part. And you can see that it is working quite nicely. However, you may want to fade the letters just before the new one is approaching. Now for that, I highly recommend to use another animator and not trying to modify the opacity of the layer, because the opacity of the layer is being controlled using the TypeMonkey script in this case with an expression. So anytime you see an expression value here, in this case marked with red, just don't touch it, avoid it. Instead, go back, select the main text. Once again, this is very important. Add another new animator. In this case, I'm just going to choose opacity. Make sure that this is a new animator. You can also name them. So in this case, I'm just going to set an opacity keyframe from this one and then move forward 10 frames and just change the opacity of the whole layer. So as soon as the other layer is coming up on the screen, the previous one is going to be faded away. Now, at the last step, we are also going to add some motion blur. So this movement will be even more smoother thanks to the motion blur. Okay, let's move on and I will show you another one. I'm going to zoom out and once again climb up so I can see my markers. And then let's just choose another point. Let's say this one. And we are going to redesign this word. This word says me. So I want to use this gap in the song and maybe introduce some kind of an interesting movement to the letters thanks to the special font that I'm using. So once again, I'm going to set a working area from this marker to maybe this one. And we can, of course, take a little bit extras from each one of the sides. I'm also going to make sure that now my controller layer is selected, and this will happen automatically. And I'm just going to push a little bit up the other letters. All right, I'm just going to select the text after unlocking it and duplicate a couple of copies. Let's start with one copy. For this copy, I'm just going to select a different color. Let's go with this nice blue. And from the type family, we can actually select a couple of other options. So for example, this will be the top one. And I think it looks kind of nice when the bevels of the letters are just showing on top of the original one. And this is what makes this font so unique. And let's duplicate another copy. So Command D, once again, Control D on the PC. Let's choose another option. So let's try the right one. And for this one, I'm just going to change maybe the colors. So we have another variation. And let's go with another one. So once again, duplicate. And once again, we can choose another theme. So maybe wireframe and see how this will look. And I think that this is an interesting look. So we can start to work on this one. Now, what I want to do is basically reveal each one on top of the other as the singer says the word here. So I'm just going to start with the second duplicate, open its properties, and for it, I'm going to add an opacity animator. I'm going to set the opacity value to 0, and let's turn off the eyes for the other layers. Open up the range selector and set an animation going from the end to the start. Now, I'm doing it here in reverse because I'm using the Hebrew module here. And the Hebrew module basically flips the letter. If you are doing it in, of course, English, you need to do the same animation using the start value. So just be aware of this. And let's go maybe 20 frames and set it to 0. So this is what we'll have so far. We have the letters, and then we are revealing those nice profiles on top of them. And basically this is the trick. So I'm just going to name this one reveal, and then Control C or copy it, Command C on the Mac, and paste the same animator on both my copies. So I'm currently at the end stage here. I'm just going to paste the same animation and then going to press U in order to see my keyframes. And let's also see the keyframes for this guy. Now, if you don't want to see the expression, you can press on Shift and Alt, Shift and Option in the Mac, and just hide the properties that you don't wish to see. This is a nice, cool trick in order to not expose too many layers. So now I can easily concentrate and drag these keyframes out of the way, and this will create the animation that I'm after. So the first one is going to reveal, then the next one, and then the last one. At any given time, you can return to the font family and maybe test something else. So maybe I think the outline mode in this case, I think will work better. Now it's also worth to ease those keyframes, and let's give it a test. Let's create a short run preview to see how this is working. So text is coming on the screen, and then we can see the two extra type weights are revealing it. Very nice. Okay, let's do another treatment, and then I'm going to show you my final composition. So once again, I'm going to collapse this text, and all those type layers, once we duplicated them, are still connected to the controller layer, meaning that all the animation, as you saw, is still intact. So make sure not to mess with the expression, and of course not to change the parenting here. Otherwise, you will basically ruin the whole effect. Okay, let's move forward in time and find something interesting. Maybe this one. In this case, as previously, we have a large gap. So it means the singer is singing this line, and then maybe there is a guitar riff or some kind of another melody until he continued to sing. So we want to make sure that this is something interesting in terms of our animation and not just leave the text as is. Once again, I'm going to select the type here. This will help me to identify where it is located here in my timeline. So here it is. Now I'm going to select my type, and I just want to remind you that we are using After Effects, so we can apply all the effects and presets that already shipped with the software. Let's go with the liquify effect. So I'm just going to start to type it. It's under the distort category. And once I reveal it, I'm going to double click in order to apply it to the text. Now I'm going to press Command or Control in order to reduce my brush. So moving to the left will reduce your brush, moving to the right will increase it. Something like this should work fine. And then sticking with the first smudge tool, I'm just going to hold down Shift and add more to the text. So what I'm doing here is changing the mesh underneath. I'm just going to do it in a couple of places, over here and over there. This is of course an artistic procedure, so you have to say to yourself how much I want to liquify or distort this text. So let's settle for this one, because we can actually use the distort percentage to make it even more extreme. And this is what I did in the original spot. I animated this over time, but I sense that it is not distorting enough. So I also add the transform effect, which of course is also under the distort category. And I disconnected the uniform scale, which allowed me to scale it on the height or on the width. And I also introduced a little bit of skewing just in order to make it more interesting. So you can animate those properties along with the distortion percentage in order to get something interesting. So just do it over time, and there you go. Now let's sign up with a last example, and this one is actually going to use shapes in terms of creating some interesting distortion. Let's go to the end of the timeline here until we actually see the last word. So let's zoom out. Once again, we can climb up. It will help us to identify where it is. Here, this is the word that I'm after. And once again, because this is the last type, I can just unlock it and select it. Now I want to create something more interesting in terms of the shapes of the layer. So instead of creating another type animation, another animator, I'm going to select the layer, go under the layer menu, and from here I'm going to create shapes from this text. Now there's a very annoying thing that happens here. The shape layer is going to be created as the first layer in the timeline. However, we can go to the layer menu, and from here we go to the arrange menu and send it all the way to the back of the stack. So I'm just going to raise it on top of my text, and note that After Effects in this case turned off the eye for the text layer. However, all the expressions and the properties, which means the colors and the opacity of the layers, are being transformed or being copied to this layer, to this outline. So now we have a different representation of the same type, meaning that we can go to the add menu here and use few of the mathematical operations. So I'm going to choose the wiggle path, and this will create a nice wiggly animation across the borders of the type. Let's hide the visibility and set a new working area by pressing B once again, and the N will go with it. And I'm just going to run preview a couple of frames here, so you can see that this is already moving. And of course you can animate it to do whatever you like. So in this case, let's go to the wiggle path and set the size to 0. So nothing is going to happen in the first few frames. Create a keyframe, move a little bit to the right, say maybe 1 second, and then set it to the value that you desire. So if we're going to run preview it before the animation, we can see that it started up as a regular text, or what looks like a regular type, and then over time it starts to do this wiggle move. And of course, from this point onward, you can continue to animate it as your heart desire. I'm going to go back to the project panel, open up the I Danced in Bed treated composition, and this have all the little things that I showed you, including a couple of solid layers that helps to make this a little bit more interesting. I just want to show you that I've used a very simple effect. This is 2D layers, and I've used the linear wipe effect, which helps to reveal those solid and time it to the animation. So it will look a little bit more connected and makes the whole thing a little bit more interesting. I also, just to break the language a little bit and to put some kind of interest, use these hands on top of the word hand in Hebrew. And I've got this clip from a template that I bought a couple of years ago. So this is basically it. You can see how you can take the automatic animation that TypeMonkey is generating, and then using After Effects built-in type option, the animators, and some effect, using of course this special font, create a nice variation which looks a little bit more interesting. So I hope this was helpful for you, and until next time we'll meet, this is Eran Stern from sternfx.com for aescripts saying goodbye.
רקדתי במיטה בתנועות קטנות